In the past, we used to think about, I have a product, how can I sell it in the market? We changed that around.
What do you think about self-awareness and how do you cultivate it?
Self-awareness is very important, but what is more important is this. And when you make a difference, it's not about making a difference on account of somebody else.
What is making a difference, in your opinion?
Just because something is done this way, can it be done better?
Nabil Habayeb is an ex-CEO of General Electric International Markets, a board director, a strategic advisor, and an executive coach. He currently is a partner at Habayeb Business Consultants.
You know, there are places in our part of the world, the biggest priority was not only building the infrastructure. I always struggle with this question of why. Why won't people level the
Playing field? Yeah.
Personal interest gets into the way. Culture gets into the way. And one time I have raised it with somebody. I said, well, why can't we? They said, well, welcome to the real world. How do you make sure you're surrounded with people with integrity? I mean, I call them the 4 Ps. My father had connections with the company that agreed to give me a summer job.
Was it an oil and gas company?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you went ahead and applied for GE. How easy was it back then to apply? I mean, it wasn't internet and LinkedIn.
No, I happened to have a couple of friends that I knew from high school who had joined GE from Lebanon. And they were doing their training about, in a place called Schenectady, New York, which is which is an hour and a half away from where I was doing my master's in Syracuse. So these guys used to come and spend the weekend with me all the time. And I said, after 4 months of every weekend them coming, I said, do me a favor, why don't you just see if you can put my CV in? And it happened that it went in and I happened to join GE. I was pretty lucky that way.
And then, so everything works with network. I was just speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's an investor, and he said, and I asked him, do you think now is easier to approach people because of the internet and LinkedIn? He said, absolutely not. Now it's even harder because every single person who is at a certain profile, they get probably hundreds, if not thousands of those LinkedIn messages and DMs, but nothing is like a human connection face to face. So network now is far more important than back then. Don't you think?
I think network and personal relationships are extremely important. And that's one of the things that I believe in was helpful for me and for many of my team members, who I encouraged to nurture relationships, to nurture this personal contacts and the network, because that's the most valuable thing, whatever you do. Even now, since I've retired, just the network that I have had, the way that I get phone calls out of the blue, hey, what about this? Whether it's mentorship or whether interest in joining a board or whether interest in being an advisor, networking is the most important thing.
When do people cross the line when it comes to networking? Because sometimes it can get pushy a little bit. Someone at your level now who is obviously at the receiving end of many, many people who are trying to either get mentorship, investments, referrals, whatever it is. When does it cross the line for you?
I think people know when not to cross the line. I think, and frankly, nobody has crossed the line with me, because, I'm pretty open. If I can help, if I can add value, I'll tell them. And if I can't, I will tell them as well. And I will guide them where to go. But nobody has come back and said, but I really want you to help, even though you said you cannot help. I think it's just being open and transparent with the person who's reaching out, and whether you can add value, whether you can assist, whether you can help. And if not, guide them to the right place through the network to do that.
So going back to 1982. So this is where the power of network and the relationship that you had with whether it's from your father, whether it's from your friends, and those obviously got you the first leg in GE. How was it like back then?
It was totally different. Certainly, the technologies that we had as field engineers then are not the same technologies that the current field engineers have. Whether it's AI, whether it is, the visuals, the internet access, and all of this stuff. But GE had, we kept on developing the technology all the time, and modifying it to make it more user friendly for the end user, for the people working at GE, and all that. So that the key thing that was common throughout GE that has not changed is the commitment to integrity and commitment to compliance. And I think, of course, technology keeps on
evolving and changing,
and innovation is important and all of that. But the commitment to compliance, the commitment to integrity, the commitment to doing all the right things, building a culture around that, building a culture around meritocracy, building a culture around respect. Yes, GE has had its ups and downs, and we have had its ups and downs. But throughout my 41 years, throughout all industries, the common theme has been that it's about the people, it's about the culture, it's about the compliance culture, it's about innovation. GE started with Edison.
Yes.
And Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was famous about, I see what the world wants and I try to solve the problem. Not exactly the same words that I just said, but so that culture stayed. Other than that, it's what's different is the evolution of
the technology,
and the processes. Now we've exited businesses when we needed to exit business. We've modified things. GE Capital used to be, big part of GE portfolio. Financial services came. We became regulated. GE, realigned. We had our last, our current chairman and CEO, modified the portfolio, felt that we need to be aligned with our investors and with our shareholders and get our board more focused. We ended up separating GE into 3 different companies.
Yes.
So, you evolve with time, but the culture is still the same.
Okay, so many questions. First, what do you mean by integrity?
Integrity is there's the spirit and there's the letter.
Okay, spirit and letter. Okay.
So the letter tells you the things that you can do and should not do.
Okay.
Whether it is about, meritocracy, whether it is about diversity, whether it is about, anti-money laundering, whether it is about Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, whether about all of the different things that could jeopardize the relationship of the company. And there are rules and regulations that everybody knows and signs up to do that. And then there's the spirit to make sure that, it's not only what is written word by word, it's the intent of making sure that people are abiding and building a culture of compliance. It's about compliance, basically. And, look, I recall a situation where I was involved in. I was a young engineer.
Uh-huh.
I had all of my team supporting the project that I was leading, whether it was legal, finance, application engineering, commercial support, all of that. And, I realized that one of our joint venture partner was planning on doing something that was inappropriate. And the joint venture partner had a very strong relationship within GE. So I immediately pulled out of the project. Multi-million-dollar project, without talking to my manager, without talking to my legal advisor.
I saw a commercial project with a client.
Commercial project.
And there was like fishy activities between the client and the, okay.
Fishy activity that our partner was going to do. I pulled out.
So you preferred losing the deal?
We preferred losing the deals because no matter how many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that was going to mean to the company, it wasn't going to jeopardize tens of billions reputation of GE. It wasn't worth it. And the fact that I pulled out, and I was a very junior engineer, and because of the connections that this partner had within GE, the next thing I got was a phone call from our chairman and CEO, Jack Welch, at that time.
Oh, wow.
And I thought I was going to get fired. And Jack said, this is the kind of spirit, this is the kind of culture we want. Thank you for that. And Jack, during his last 2 years, was my mentor.
Oh, wow.
So I think
that's amazing.
This is doing the right thing all the time.
Walking the talk, not just, like you said, it's not just letters.
Yes, and there is no gray area. It's either black or white. And I've told everybody in throughout my career, you can be my best friend. If you think you are playing in the gray area and you need help, we'll make sure to help you make sure that you stay in the green, not in the red. But if you continue playing in the gray area, knowing that it is in gray area or in the red area, even though you would be my best friend,
you're out.
You're out. And I've had that
as clear as day.
Clear as day. And I've had these situations where somebody I had to let go, when he left my office, got out of my office, turned around and came back and looked at me and said, what am I going to tell my family today? What am I going to tell my family why I got fired? What am I going to tell my kids? Oh, I violated compliance. I violated integrity. It's not worth it. Not worth it personally. It's not worth it to jeopardize the company into doing anything. I think that's what built up a lot of trust in our teams with our key stakeholders throughout the world.
So, look, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I need to really dig deeper because as obvious as it sounds and as intuitive and sort of, common knowledge as it is, it's sad that I'm surprised by this as a common sort of red flag, but also something to be proud of. Like something that you're supposed to be common, but then when you talk about it as if it's something that is from an organizational perspective, integrity and compliance. Why? You mentioned reputation, but why?
Because not everybody plays to the same rules, unfortunately, in many parts of the world. And when you hire people from around the world, you need to make sure you're hiring the people who have the same DNA, have the same values, share the same cultural values. And to make sure that, wherever you are in the world, how junior or senior you are in the organization, you understand clearly the rules of the games and what you can do and what you cannot do. Because a little thing that somebody who is not aware doing the wrong thing could put the company or your reputation at risk. And this has happened. Not everybody from the people who work in the same industry have the same values. Not everybody
that's my question. Why? Why don't everyone have this certain level of rigor when it comes to, I would call it ethical practices?
Yes.
Yeah. Why would it's common. Yeah. Stealing is bad. Bribery is bad. Obviously, like you said, something that is not based on merit is bad. Yeah. If let's say the scope of work or the requirements or let's say the specs is not met clearly, this is cheating. And cheating is bad. It's unethical. Yeah. Why isn't it as common as you and I would want it to be? Is it capitalism?
I don't
want to drive the discussion, but I just want to touch on things that are slightly a bit nuanced. Does that make sense?
I always struggle with this question of why. Why won't people level
playing field. Yeah.
Why? Why wouldn't they level the playing field for everybody? Personal interest gets into the way. Culture gets into the way. Not everybody feels. I mean, look, open up the newspapers and you can see what happens around the world and in governments and organizations and all of that. And one time I have raised it with somebody. I said, why can't we? He said, well, welcome to the real world. It is. Not everybody plays to the same
playing field. Like it's not, sometimes fairness is not a variable in some. I mean, if you have power and authority, I mean, okay. On that note, what do you think of tariffs?
Oh God. Look,
is it fair? Is it kind of leveling the playing field, or is it playing on a different kind of rules?
I really don't want to get into the political.
Not political, economical, let's say. Yeah. I mean, let's say you're a big organization and you're controlling the rules of the game, and you're able to twist the rules of the game to your own advantage. Like you said, personal advantage, it can be, or personal interest, it can be individual, it can be organizational, right? You mentioned that you had this partner who tried to play this game, but you refused to do that. Now, you refused it because of, dare I say, personal, ethical...
because of the values that I have.
That you have, that then was...
And the values that the company...
Exactly. It matched.
It matches, and that's why I stayed for 41 years in the company.
So if it didn't match, what would happen? So let's say John Welsh called you.
Jack Welsh. Yeah.
Jack Welsh called you, and he said, why did you do that? You lost us millions, come to my office. What would you have done?
I left the company.
Oh, you didn't think.
Huh?
You didn't think about answering this question. You just left the company, right?
I would have left the company. Why would you be in a company that doesn't share your values? Why? Look, you asked me at the beginning why, how it started in 1982.
Yes.
I told you that I started as a field engineer. And my first day going to work at the training center as a field engineer, my father came to me and he knocked at the window of my car. He said, you're leaving today on your first job. I have 2 pieces of advice for you. He said, keep your name clean and make a difference. He said, when you leave the world, the only thing you would take away with you is your name. And the only thing that people will remember you with is the difference you have made in life. Why would you tarnish your name? Why would you be involved in anything that is inappropriate? That's the culture I had, but that's why I stayed for 41 years. That's the values that I was brought up with. That's the values that many of our employees have brought up with. And that's what we wanted.
And the ones that didn't have that were out.
We're out.
What was your dream back then?
I never thought when I joined in 1982 that I would be senior vice president in GE.
You didn't aspire?
First, you're young.
Or was it too far? Yeah.
Too far out.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would be reporting to the chairman and CEO. I never thought that Jack Welsh would mentor me for a couple of years. I never thought that I would have such, be where I am at. All what I thought of is making sure that I'm doing the right thing. I mean, make a difference. Keep your name clean and make a difference. That's the theme that stayed on. And it was at a time when, there wasn't too much focus on this part of the world where I was working. So every time we started growing, it was natural for me to be asked to take on a bigger role. And that's, so I was, but every role that I would take, I would think, well, is this the right career move? Even though my manager or my manager's manager asked me to take this role, is this the right career move for me? What does that mean for the next step? So I was more looking at, not the next job I was going to take, but what does it mean for me after that? And focusing on doing the right job when I took the job. And,
so you were
things evolved, the company grew in the region, and, it was helpful to do that. I was lucky, maybe, right time at the right place, perhaps. But it's more than that. It's more than that. It's more about, the things that, help you grow. I don't know if you saw my LinkedIn post when I retired.
Yes, of course.
It's all about the people.
Yes.
It's all about purpose. It's all about, I talked in that post mainly about the people.
Yes, I noticed that.
And how do you build up the team? How do you celebrate the team? How do you make sure that, the team have the same culture, the same values? How do you make sure that, you're surrounded with people with integrity, and all of that. But it's also about a purpose. If you create a purpose,
yes.
It's also about the process. It's also about the product. I mean, I call them the 4 Ps. It's the purpose, it's the people, it's the process, and it's the product. When I talk about the product, I'm not talking about just the innovational part in the technology. It's also about making sure that you prioritize things when you think about the product.
Results.
Actually, and this is something that I picked up from our last chairman, Larry Culp, who I have a lot of respect for. Actually, I have respect for all of the chairmen and CEOs that I've worked with. Well, when you think about it, it's about prioritizing 4 things in that order of priority. First, safety.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, quality.
Okay.
Third, delivery.
Of course.
And fourth is cost.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because people sometimes, pass on safety or quality for cost.
Yes, to maximize profit.
Yes, or delivery to maximize.
To deliver on time because they need to finish the project.
All of our reviews, all of our focus was about safety, then quality, then delivery, then cost.
That's amazing. I mean, thinking through frameworks really clarifies your day-to-day job. It just makes decision-making easy, isn't it?
So much easier. When we think about process as well.
Yes, of course.
Same way.
Because process wraps this thing up. I mean, those 4 priorities, you said, let me try to remember them. So first safety, then quality, and then delivery. Obviously, you have to deliver. And then obviously price and cost, right? Because otherwise it has to be, viable.
Right.
GE is a massive company and I don't want to dig deeper into the company because I'm interested in Nabil, not GE, right? But obviously GE is a big, there's a big part of GE that is also Nabil. But you deal with a lot of governments because it's like power plants and most of your clients are governments, naturally speaking, right? Especially in this part of the world.
Governments, hospitals, airlines.
Exactly. But mostly probably, I'm suspecting here that the biggest chunk of your revenue is coming from sources that are either paid for or directly sponsored by governments, because like power plants, even hospitals, the large hospitals are usually owned by government and so on and so forth. How do you deal with corruption?
It's the same value of focus that we have on compliance. It's the focus on compliance, the culture of compliance. When you get in and you see there's something that is inappropriate, you get out. All sorts of questions would be asked by people. Well, why is GE out? Why are you out? What happened? You can then try to level the playing field. And if they decide not to level the playing field, we're not interested.
Is that sustainable? I mean, obviously it is, but generally speaking, in a world where it's obviously dominated by the winners, I'm talking about capitalist markets where sometimes fishy activities are, what people shrug and move on. Is it sustainable, genuinely speaking, at that level?
Well, I don't think it's sustainable from their part. I think eventually something will catch you at the end of the day if they, and it has caught a lot of people. Uh, uh, but, the position, look, things used to be different in the past, a lot worse.
Yes.
I think
because transparency wasn't as easy or as clear as now.
Things are a lot better now. So you still have to be very careful.
So in the past, let's say in the 90s or early 2000s, you used to fight the fight.
We still fight the fight.
You still fight the fight.
Yeah. I mean, I still fight the fight. I'm sure the teams that, that we retirees are looking for to help grow GE for another 100 years are still fighting the fight, but at least making sure of. But I think the fight is easier now than before because I think people are realizing that it's not sustainable and they need to level the playing field.
But in a world of, again, I don't want again to kind of steer the discussion, but I'm really interested in your opinion. In a world where capitalism is the rule of the game, which means profit, which means people literally kill and invade for profit and for others. How can you survive as an organization, as a culture, as a principle in this kind of massive jungle?
I think you always have to focus on what is it that, again, the purpose. What are you trying to do in a particular geography? Who are you trying to serve? You're trying to serve the people. Right. Whether it is improving healthcare, whether it's providing lights and power and infrastructure, whether it is help transport people to safe places or whatever, whatever you do. I'm talking GE, but you can be in any industry.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to do? What is the purpose? Are you trying to, for us, the purpose is to improve people's lives. When I was asked to lead Middle East and Africa, I was and moved to corporate. I told at that time our chairman, CEO, Jeff Immelt, who's a good friend, I told him, I said, Jeff, why do you want me to move from running a business to a corporate position? I know how people in businesses think of corporate. He said, because I want you to do things differently. So I said, well, what is it that we can do differently? In the past, we used to think about, I have a product, how can I sell it in the market? We changed that around to say, I have a market, what does it mean to the company?
Okay.
And when you identify the market,
that's a startup mentality.
Needs, right. To what? Yes, it's Edison's thoughts as well. To say, okay, now I map the product and you create the white space, and that's how you fill the white space. And the white space could be about making sure that, you are aligned with the key stakeholders. You need to make sure that you're aligned with the key stakeholders' priorities. There are places in our part of the world, the biggest priority was not only building the infrastructure, whether it's power plants or whatever we do. It's about how do you bring employment to more than 60% of the people that are less than 30 years old.
That was a stated goal, like an objective?
Yes, of course. It was, you talk to the governments around the regions to say, look, help me as well in creating jobs for people who are less than 30 years old. 60% of my population. Look at Saudi Arabia population, this part of the world, and so on. This is where we started building partnerships and joint ventures and localization plan. To have local people lead the organization, to develop training program for our customers, and to drive women in leadership. as well, and make sure that women have a big role. A lot of these things, I'm just listing a few here, but a lot of these things were stated goals not as a condition for us to get a contract.
Okay.
Were stated goals that the stakeholders want to see you, that you are, stakeholders would like help with. And when you come in and say, look, I'm not just here because there's a tender for a particular project, I'm going to build it and leave. I'm here for the long term. I want to be part of the fabric. I want to make sure that you're helping you achieve your objectives. And that's what we did in building the localization plan. So back to your questions around tariffs.
Yeah.
Yes, we did create jobs outside the US because it's important for us to grow. Okay, can these jobs go back? There are jobs for everywhere, possibilities for them. But our stated objective was to become part of the fabric, and not just to be looked at us as an American company.
Yeah.
But we are a global company by, if you take a look at all the leadership in the region, up until I retired, all of them are
from the region.
If you take a look at my team, when I left, 60% of my leadership team were women from the region. And that's what we try to do to build up on this.
I really want to understand this because, I worked with people from corporates, especially US quote unquote multinationals. And I do quote unquote because they say they're multinationals, but then you look at them, they only serve the American interest. Now, that's nothing political. Of course, if you're an American company, if you're a UAE company, if you're a Saudi company, you would serve your needs. This is how it is. There's no wrong or right about it. It's amoral. It's not immoral or moral, right? Why would an American company want, unless it's the leadership here, spearheaded by you and people like you, who would want to give back? But why would an American company want to give back to a completely different region? That sort of doesn't make sense to me, at least, with my experience.
I think what was important at that time for us is to make sure that we send the message that we are part of the fabric, that we are here for the long term, that we are not opportunistics.
Okay.
We are not opportunistic, that we are, we benefit a lot from, if you take a look at some of the joint ventures that we have built here, they export around the world from here. GE benefits from it. Doesn't mean that we could have built the same capacity in the US and sold it elsewhere. I think it's important to be part of the fabric.
So, okay, let me go back to you as a leader and your focus on culture and people, because this is also very, very important for me to understand how you were able to kind of build that ecosystem around you. How do you know? How do you know that you're a good leader?
I think it's not what you say, it's what people say about you.
Okay.
Interesting. It's not about it's about whether people want to work for you, want to be part of your organization, whether people that grow bigger than when they were in your organization still stay together, reach out to you, collaborate, ask for help, for mentorship, stay connected, stay with the relationship or not. I think, to me, it's, I don't know how to answer that. I can just answer it from the fact of what, the people say about you, want to work for you, and when they leave your organization, how you stay connected with them.
What do you think about self-awareness and how do you cultivate it?
Look, self-awareness is very important, but what is more important is to stay humble as a leader.
Okay. What's the key to staying humble? Because there are many people think they're humble. Okay, let me explain my question a little bit. And this is my personal experience, and this is part of my research as well. Lots of people think that they are good leaders. Lots of people think that they are humble. Lots of people think that because everybody calls them, because they sit for half an hour or 1 hour in a meeting, and then all of a sudden their WhatsApp has 20 messages or 30 messages. To them, this quantitative way of looking at relationships made them feel genuinely, they're true to themselves, that they are good leaders, right? But they're that because of their position. They're that because of the power dynamic. They're that because people are genuinely being obsequious, being, apple polishers, being, like if they want things, and they're no more. I mean, the more I interview leaders, the more I know that they're confused about who's honest and sincere with them and who's not. Because the more you grow up in the organization, in the society, in the status, generally speaking, the more it's very difficult to see who's honest and who's not. And therefore, you become clouded on yourself as well. And that's why self-awareness becomes far more deliberate and conscious to leaders to cultivate it. So what do you think about, what do you feel about this thought?
I think when I talk about being humble and being self-aware, I think it's also a matter of walking the talk, watching what you're saying, making sure that you're reaching out throughout the organization to everybody, being open and transparent in everything that you do, and making sure that you are focused on the purpose and the structure that you have built to achieve that purpose, and helping every single person in that box that you have in your organization that is going to succeed in that role to achieve the common purpose, and make them feel good that, hey, I have contributed to this purpose, that person has contributed, and that we collectively have celebrated that, not just me as a leader celebrated that. A lot of leaders manage upwards more than manage downwards in the organization. Yes, there's a balance there, but you cannot keep in one direction either. You have to make sure that you're probably spending more time managing down rather than managing up. How do you make sure that you're really sincere, that you pick the right person who has the values, who's humble, who's transparent, who's focused, who understands how important their role is in the organization to achieve that purpose. And the role of the leader then is, for each person in that organization box, the role of the leader is to make sure that that person develops a roadmap based on their function that's going to help the team achieve that purpose. And the role of the leader is to help this person modify that roadmap, have the operating rhythm with that individual to make sure that they are achieving their roadmap, and whether they need help to achieve that roadmap, and how you help them with achieve that roadmap. And if they ask for help, it's great. If they're achieving it without asking their help, it's even better. But if they don't ask for help and they don't achieve that objective of their roadmap, then you have a serious discussion with that person. Is the right person in the role or not? Is he better off in another? Is he or she better off in another role or not? Is it part of the DNA that they cannot do it? If it's part of the DNA and you cannot change the DNA, then that's it. But you have to be open and transparent, and you put the effort, and you work it throughout the organization with everybody, and I think that's how you can people feel that you're sincere, you're open, you're transparent, you're trying to help achieve a common objective for everybody, and you're celebrating that whole team. And then when these people have the opportunity to grow into bigger roles, it's driving them, you're supporting them, you're celebrating their bigger roles and all of that. I think that's how you become a big, a good leader. And hopefully then people will just, people will then talk about it rather than you talk about it.
I have a feeling you're recalling some memories. Do you have any that you can share with us?
Of 41 years, you have got.
What's one memory that sticks out to you that makes you feel happy and proud when it comes to these sort of?
When several of my great teams became corporate officers. Every time one of my team member became an officer of GE, that was a proud moment for me.
That's amazing. Can anyone be a leader?
If they are humble, if they're transparent, if they're focused, they can be.
So not everyone. That's the, I think this is one of the dilemmas that I always have, which is, how do you know, right? Because it's easy to think that you are self-aware. I mean, it's easy for you to say you've reached, you can look back and see, you post your retirement message, and I really invite all of the viewers to go and read it. It's absolutely inspiring and very powerful. Honest to God, when I was reading it, I got goosebumps because it was all selfless. It's like celebrating everything but you, which is really a true leader. So what I'm trying to say is it's easy for you to say because you already reached. You can look back and see that, oh, because this happened and that happened. Oh, when I left, people reached out. Until now, people reaching out. It's easy. How do you tell yourself in the year 2000? How do you know? It's the year 2000 now. How would you know? Now it's easy for you to know. But how would you know if it's the year 2000 now and you're on your growth trajectory, you still have 25 years, 24 years until retirement? What would you tell yourself then?
I would say, keep your name clean and make a difference.
It's all about integrity.
Same thing that my father told me. It's, make a difference. When you make a difference, people will recognize you. And when you make a difference, it's not about making a difference on account of somebody else. It's making a difference in support and in coordination with everybody else on your team. Some people will step over others to get to where they want. You could do it a couple times, but you build up a reputation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's again, it's, my late father was a very wise man, and his advice, 2 pieces of advice for me, just stayed with me.
What is making a difference in your opinion, in your definition?
Making a difference is to continuously think about the status quo, the process, the product, the thinking, whatever, and improving on it. Just because something is done this way, can it be done better? How can we do it better? That's when I talked about the roadmap for everybody in that box.
Yes.
That they develop. My role was, well, how do I challenge it better, to make it better? What can we do to the next step? How can we improve it? When I talked about, when Jeff Immelt asked me to take this role, I said, I want you to do it differently. The thinking was, hey, Middle East, low margins, low technology, you'll never be able to, it's high risk and all this stuff. Okay, we had to change that mentality. And we changed it by saying, okay, it's not just about selling a product. It's about what does the market mean to me, to GE. So it's this whole continuous thinking of improving things that would make a difference. And I think, as Larry Kolb brought this whole culture of Kaizen and continuous improvement in GE, I think that helps make huge difference, whether it is, again, if the purpose is the same, it's about, it makes a difference with the people, it makes a difference with the process, it makes a difference with the product at the end of the day when you have this mentality.
What is culture? Organizational culture?
It's building, it's having clear understanding of what this company or what your organization stands for, and making sure that you are surrounded with people who share the same values, again, around the purpose, around the process, around the product, and having the people around it to be sharing the same thing. So when you have those four things, the 4 Ps.
Yes.
All right. That's building the culture around
So
organization.
well, we always hear this cliche, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? What's the difference between culture and strategy in this context? Because you mentioned people, you mentioned shared values. You don't talk about values in strategy. You talk about KPIs, you talk about goals, you talk about objectives, you talk about timelines, sometimes costs, forecasting, whatever it is that strategy document has, whether it's annually, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. How are these two intersect together, and what's the importance of doing one in the context of the other?
Look, I think the strategy is the way to get to what you want to achieve as a purpose. Some people confuse strategy with tactics as well. But I don't think that you can confuse strategy with culture. It's, strategy is the roadmap to achieve the purpose that the other 3 Ps are going to help achieve.
So when you can strategy survive? Let's say you have a goal, you have a clear target, you know the how and everything else. This usually is easy because it's sort of quantitative. Okay, so this is what we need to do. And then you say, okay, well, for the past 30 years, this is how we were. This is where we want to go. These are the markets we want to go into. And this is the different activities that we need to do. And these are the timelines. Very clear. People don't grapple with strategy because it's clear cut. You show people, okay, this is what we want. People can object to it. Yeah, we need this cost. How do you communicate culture? Because culture is not, it's like you said, values. What is values?
I think it's difficult to communicate culture. It's, when you compare it to, what's your culture as an individual? Okay, I am an Arab American. Well, what does that mean? It's how I believe, what I believe in.
Yes.
Right? And it's the values that I share. It's about, how I interact with people, and I'm an Arab American with an Emirati passport. How do I, does that create my culture? Does that say more? Does that mean that my culture would clash with somebody else? No, not necessarily. But people would recognize that, okay, this is, where I am from and what values that I may have, at least the basic things and so on.
From a stereotypical perspective, you mean?
From a stereotypical perspective.
But that's dangerous for organizations, right? If organizations don't clearly articulate and build and cultivate cultures, it might be then like a big soup or a melting pot of all of those cultures, isn't it?
Which is fine, but then you have your company culture.
Yeah.
You know, when you drive meritocracy, when you drive compliance, when you drive the whole thing around
integrity,
continuous improvement, it's around, I mean, that's the culture that you have. You could be wherever you want to be from around the world, right? But when it comes together to this company, this organization, we're all sharing the same
values and assumptions. Okay. So let me zoom out a bit now.
Okay.
So we talked about you, Nabil. We talked about GE and the culture. What do you think of the state of innovation in our region here, from your perspective?
You think about this region, young generation, education level is getting a lot better. Entrepreneurial spirit is becoming
more common.
Investments is getting into innovation. Entrepreneurial is is coming in. Regulation is improving as well, so that people are not afraid to fail. I think all of this is driving more innovation and spirit. Are we there? Do we have enough IP that has been generated and
to put us on the map,
the map and so on? We're getting there. I think. You know, I'm positive about it, and I think a lot of my VC friends are very much into it, and I think it's where it is at this level. I think there's always room to improve.
I like your positive view, which is absolutely pragmatic. It's real. It's not politically correct. It's absolutely at the right state of mind, which is, if you look at the people and how they're now more courageous, and the courage comes from the entrepreneurial ventures, is because of the regulation. And I love how you just map those two together, because if you don't have an environment, the soil that actually is conducive to this type of innovation, to this type of thinking, entrepreneurial thinking, people always be risk averse, and because if it's affecting their lives, they won't do it. And you just need a couple of failed attempts that then kind of scares everyone off. But that's changing, and I can see that. How is the confidence when it comes? You mentioned VC friends, and I'm assuming you're also an investor at some level. So how's the confidence in the founder maturity in this region from your experience and connections?
The confidence in
the founder maturity.
Yeah, I think. I think what I see is that people are not afraid to fail,
even investors with their money.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they do their due diligence and so on, but from a founders of organizations and so on, they're not afraid. And of course, investors are very careful about doing the proper due diligence and knowing exactly what
all the parameters that needs to be. Yeah.
But their founders are, I don't want to talk about the particular ones that I have been involved in. They're really impressive, hardworking, and focused, and humble, and very entrepreneurial, and they're eager and want to do everything to succeed, and really very impressive. I wish. This spirit was not there for many in the past.
Of course,
but
especially in our region, right? Coming out of lots of wars and instabilities, and
right.
But if if you look at how investors look at them, do they look at them the same way you're looking at them now, with the confidence of, because I'll tell you what, if an investor wants to give money to a founder, obviously to the investor the money is gone, because it's not a loan, and it's something that you have to be very careful on. And as you said, due diligence has to be done, but due diligence is not as easy as it sounds, because otherwise, how would you know? You're literally predicting the future, and you cannot predict it with any sort of accuracy unless you have blind belief or confidence. So how do you think this dynamic between VCs and founders, is it same as what you just mentioned now? They're eager to give money to actually, even if it's an idea or a PowerPoint presentation?
I don't think we can generalize, and I can't generalize it much. I think it has to be on the individual, on the in each initiative on its own to be looked at. But I have seen investors that have no problem in investing not only in the first round but in several rounds to support it, and others basically said enough is enough. And and it depends on the investor, on the appetite, on the leadership team of the founders, where they're going, what's the strategy. It varies.
What's missing in your opinion? In this dynamic,
between the investor and the founders?
Because this dynamic is very, I mean, you mentioned regulations, and I attest to that. There's lots of regulations, there's lots of incentive systems, there's lots of activities that are pushing people to actually at least look at that side of the value creation when it comes, not just employment, not just corporates, not just family offices, not just governments, but also entrepreneurship. And that has to be healthy to diversify the economy. But what's missing in your opinion?
I don't know how much there's missing, because my involvement is very limited in this area, to only few that I'm very proud of.
So you're one of the lucky ones, huh?
Perhaps, maybe I'm not doing enough, but the ones that I have been involved with, I mean, I think really what I would look at, not necessarily what's missing, but what I would improve on.
Yes,
is more transparency, more collaboration, more outreach.
Okay.
To whether it's board members or others that can help, especially those that are new in this process, and that don't have that credibility, to reach out to people and make sure that they support them, and not to be shy from asking for help, or be afraid for asking for help. Is that gonna change? What is going to be the reputation, or what does that mean? Is that gonna reflect negatively on me? Just to be more eager to reach out to others, I would say.
So what can be improved is that if these founders of these, let's say, young entrepreneurs or people who are starting up, to actually reach out more?
I would say yes.
Okay, can you explain a little bit? So if someone is listening now, and what's your advice to them? What should they do? Just go on LinkedIn and try to DM people, or how do they do it?
It's through the network. I think I'm having trouble with this issue. I'm not talking about getting more people on the board that would help them out, but reach out, to those that could help you out with resolving issues that you may have. Networking, as we talked about networking at the beginning. Networking is very important. Develop these relationships is very important. Reach out to the networks, reach out to the relationships. Go out into these seminars and into these exhibitions, everything
conferences,
else, conferences that help you, expand your network, and not be shy about talking about it. And you never cross the line. I think.
You have to be careful.
You have to be careful you don't cross the line. But I think it's important that they, especially the ones that are starting up, to drive that.
They should be comfortable with rejection, I suppose.
Yeah.
So they go to conferences, they go to people, they get rejected, but still they don't get detracted. And
no, but it's about developing the network and the relationship, and getting support wherever they need it, and Yeah.
What's the most exciting thing you're working on right now? Because you mentioned you're working with startups and you're mentoring people.
So when I decided to plan for retirement, I decided to focus on two things. One, for-profit and not-for-profit.
Okay.
Not-for-profit is focused on healthcare and education,
Nice.
because I think these are the most important things for the people. And I'm on the board of few organizations that focuses on that. Also on the board of a think tank that we started several years ago in Washington, D.C., to focus on the Gulf states.
Okay.
And separate Gulf states from the broader Middle East issues, because sometimes
Yes, they're mixed. Yes,
mixed,
yes. Especially in the West.
right.
Yeah.
So that's what I basically do, not for profit. I'm on the board of some healthcare institutions and on the board of education institutions as well. For profit, I'm advising the CEOs of 3 global companies that are looking at strategy from your own business, that looking at governance structure and helping all the things that I just talked about earlier. And on the board of a startup as well that is going to really change the game from industrial applications for spare parts.
Okay. So what stage are they in? Are they Series A, B, pre-seed?
I just
Still.
no,
you don't want...
they're well positioned. They're well.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, let me go back.
Actually, it's not a startup. I cannot say it's a startup, but it's more than that. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like it's older than, let's say, 5 or 10 years. Okay. Okay. So if we have lots of people that are, let's say, your age, thinking about retirement, what's your advice to them?
My age, they should have thought about retirement earlier.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
But when you're thinking about retirement, I think it's important to start planning for that. At the end of the day, you need to stay relevant. Whatever you want to do, whether I chose, in addition to what I just said of advising for profit and not for profit, also enjoying the things that I really like to do. I'm playing golf, skiing more, swimming more, spending a lot of time with my children, grandchildren, things that I didn't get to spend too much time with my children when they're growing up. And so now I'm really enjoying doing that with my grandchildren and so on. So it's just about being relevant. A friend of mine gave me this book, and it talked about the different stages of life.
Okay.
The first stage is when you're up to your late 20s, early 30s, is when you're building the foundation for yourself.
Yeah.
You go to good school, education, get a good job, and all of this stuff. Second phase is when you're building the foundation for the family. So,
Yes.
the family, make sure that they're building the right foundation for themselves up to the age of, mid-late 50s, depending on the individual. Some people that may have, depends on the situation. The third stage, which is I'm at, is when you start giving back. And that started not only when I retired, but before I retired. Both while I was working, succession planning, mentorship, making sure that people are, benefiting from your previous experience and so on. And now when I retired, doing the things that I'm doing where I can add value to where we are. So I think it's thinking about how you give back and stay relevant. And it's also how you stay relevant and enjoy life after retirement and enjoying the fruits of, hard work.
Your hard work.
And, different people have different things. A friend of mine is doing carpentry, another person is doing something else, and I'm trying to improve my golf game. And
when should they start thinking about retirement? How soon or how late is too late?
I think again, it varies, depends on the individual.
So 40, too early. 50.
I have a friend of mine who retired at 40, and he's doing
at
great.
40.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
There are others that even past 65 are not ready to retire. But it's a matter of when you feel that you can be relevant, and how you can be relevant and prepare yourself through that.
How did you do it? So when was it when you started thinking about retirement? Do you remember?
Probably when I was in my mid-50s.
Okay.
And because I still had a lot to do to make sure that not only from a company point of view, still have the runway and everything else, but also making sure that whatever other personal things that I needed to make sure of are there. But that's when I started joining the not-for-profit areas. You get experience with the boards. You get experience.
Yes, you started experimenting.
Yeah. You don't want to work for another for-profit organization that could be conflict of interest. Your board may not agree for you to work for somebody else and all of this other stuff. But at least you start building the foundation to, what is it like to be on a board? And what is it like to give back? And how do you, and just being on that develops a network for you that could be helpful, which is outside your network that is at work and all that. So that's when I started. And then, a couple of years before I retired from GE, and we were talking with my leadership about my timeline and making sure the succession plans and everything.
No business interruption. Yeah.
No business, all of that is when they also agreed that I would join for-profit organizations. So it gave me that process.
Transition phase. Yeah.
So you have to, it all depends where you are, at what stage of your life you are at. Are you ready to take on these things? But start planning ahead of time with things that are not conflicting or taking away from your job, because that's a priority, especially if you've got the runway with a company still. But at least gives you the experience and the network. Experience will be on a board and the network that you pick up.
What would you have done differently in your planning to retire?
I would have spent more time. I would have spent more time playing golf, so that my handicap would have been a lot lower when I started.
Okay. That's interesting.
So, no, but I would. I would. I don't know what I would have done differently.
So you're satisfied with exactly how things work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank God.
Okay, mashallah. That's good. That's good. And what would you, let's say, would you start exactly the same time, or would you start earlier, or for the planning and joining, especially the joining and the, getting dappling?
It all depends on the individual.
But what would you now?
Would I have done? No, I would have.
Exactly how it is. Yeah. Mashallah. So you planned it well and you executed it well. Obviously,
it worked out well.
It worked out.
I don't know how much of it was planning, as much as I knew what I was going to do. Opportunities came up, and it fit what I was, the plans. And but I would also be, if opportunities don't come up, and that is of interest for people, that to be more proactive in doing that.
Yeah. Okay. It's 1982. What do you tell yourself?
I'm working for a company that, what I would tell myself, it's 1982, is that how can I have my US education background benefit this part of the world? And how can my background in this part of the world help the company I'm working with. That was really my thinking.
That wasn't.
That was really
That was
thinking.
okay.
That was really my thinking. This is why I decided to go back for my master's and join an American company and all that. 1982 was also what I said, but what I would no, I would leave it at that. I was
you got me intrigued. you have to say.
I wouldn't have waited 2 more years to get married. I would have married my wife 2 years earlier.
Oh, that's nice. Come on. Why don't you want to share this with us? That's so beautiful. Okay. So you would tell yourself you would have done it earlier.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. You know what? It gives the thing is, there's a human behind every story, right? And that human story is what makes everything beautiful. And it's not just about, because I'm sort of in my late 40s now, and what I'm doing now is almost exactly what you're saying now. It's my retirement plan. I was a corporate leader for the longest period. I have almost 26 years of experience in a professional experience, and I thought to myself, I can't, this is my story, right? It doesn't have to be that story, but this is my story. I can't be an employee. I don't want to be an employee for the rest of my life. And that was my story. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I just did it. But what I did right is I didn't think twice about my wife. So we're kind of college sweethearts. We agreed and we got married before I even have a contract or anything. I just did that, right? Now, it worked out well for me. As you said, luck played a big role in everything that I've had in my life. I've never, alhamdulillah, I've never submitted a CV in my life. I was just kind of picked from one job to the other until I was like, you know what, that's it. I'm just going to have my own thing. And who knows, maybe in 20 years, I'll be able to be sufficient, or in 2 years or even less, I'll go and submit my CV. No one knows, but I'm working on that. So this is it. I mean, listen.
Well, you're one step ahead of me, because I did submit my CV once.
Oh, you did?
When I joined GE. That was the only time.
Oh, yeah.
But I was handpicked afterwards. I've never.
Your story is so familiar, because my father, and he's now in Jordan, and we live together. Sometimes he comes here. He stayed in one company since 1971, ADNOC, right? So I was born and raised here in the UAE. And it's the fact that he was in one company for the entirety of his life, I think some 50 years or something, it's crazy, right? We lived all our lives in Abu Dhabi when he was working at the ADMA at the time, and then ADNOC. It was crazy. And now in my first, I think 10 years, I've changed probably 7 companies. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to live his life, because, as much as he, exactly like you, he grew in the ladder of the corporate, organization, and he retired. He even retired. He was 67, 68 when he retired a few years back. And I look at him, and he had it all. And I think back then, he didn't even change a light bulb. If you know what I mean? Like, he called someone to come and change a light bulb. It was like everything that we needed was there. But then, would I do it the same thing? I think time changed.
Oh, it's totally.
It's not the same.
Totally.
Don't you agree? I mean, it's like crazy.
Yeah, no, my father worked for the same company for 38 years. And people ask me, really 41 years with the same company? Maybe for me it was different, because like I said at the beginning, GE was in different industries and different geographies. It's like changing industries and so on. And
it's a country on its own, right?
Without having to change the company,
yes.
which was great. But if it were different, I don't know.
If you're doing the same thing over and over, probably you've changed.
Yeah. It's again, it goes back to being in a place that shares the same purpose and same.
Yeah, I love this. Is very refreshing about you, Nabil. It's the way you link everything to purpose, integrity. compliance, I have problems with compliance, but in a good way. Because one of the things that I hated about working in an organization is compliance. And when I say compliance, I don't mean it in the ethical, non-ethical way.
Okay.
I mean it in the structured
Rigid
way.
processes.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
large organizations, right?
Yeah, but that's different. I think that's, there are things that you have to have strict compliance to in the processes.
Purchasing, for example.
Yeah, but there are things in the processes as well that needs continuous improvement. And that's the culture that you have to.
You have to make sure that
Right.
exactly. And you're lucky if you're in an organization that has a culture that accepts someone like me, who's always an outlier, who's always sort of trying to think differently, but then makes mistakes. Because I like to make mistakes. I like to kind of step out. I always compare myself. That those when you watch National Geography and you see those penguins at the kind of the glacier, right? And then there's the first one that jumps in. That's me. So I always jump in, and I got fired quite a few times in my life because of that, which is something that I'm very proud of. It hit me at the time, but now I'm proud of. But then, as you said, your time, in the 80s, in the 90s and 2000s, completely different.
Yeah.
Now, because of the awareness that you have, because of the internet, because of the knowledge, the proliferation of knowledge, it's just different. And cultures, like you said, and I kind of circle back to your point, cultures cannot be in the same way as they were back in the 80s and 90s. They have to be adaptable. They have to be something that accepts certain levels of risk, controlled risk, but then to grow and be relevant.
Yes. But again, I don't want to confuse compliance with continuous improvement and innovation. Stepping out of the, and again, it all has to be part of. Like when I talked about each person in a box that develops their roadmap that fits that purpose. You want people who challenge the process to make it better. And if you're a leader that is not afraid of that change, and you're willing to listen and be open to it, you may not agree with it, but be open to it and guide that person, that individually, that's great. But if you're a person that's rigid, won't accept any change,
or shuts down
and so on, doesn't work well. I don't know your experience with those that fired you, whether they're still around or not, but that's
they're still around. And to everyone's surprise, we're extremely good friends.
Okay.
Because it's like, look, one thing I pride myself is having extremely high EQ, and I try to make sure that anyone who rubs shoulder with me has high EQ. Because at that time, I'm convinced that they made the right decision for that purpose in that context, right? And they have no obligation towards my life and my sort of everything that is my sustenance, right? This is not their, it's my responsibility. And that's what I used to tell all of my teammates when I used to manage large teams. It's like, hey, it's not my responsibility, your life. You go grow, make sure that you're relevant, make sure that the company has no obligation in your contract. There's no obligation or terms and conditions that I will look after your livelihood. It's you who have to look after you. And the moment you're irrelevant, guess what? Some decisions has to be made. So maybe, and that's my reciprocation in the same way of thinking, maybe that's their way of thinking at the time. And I'm very content with that.
That's great.
So
obviously you're doing very well. So congratulations.
Hopefully, I haven't yet reached, and I think I will never reach, but I'm working on it. I'm still work in progress. But okay, let me end with this.
Okay.
If there's one question that you would want me to ask, what would that be?
If there's one question you want me to ask me, that I haven't covered, I think you've done a great job on covering everything. I can share, or I think I would ask. I would have expected, or I would want you to ask me, when you're interviewing people, what is the question that you would ask the candidate that is important for you to know the character of the person?
Wow, that's a very powerful question. That question. What is it that you would ask people to know their character, to know that they are fit for whatever you're interviewing them for?
If you have a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, what values or what are the things that you would want to pass on to your children?
Oh, wow. You would ask that?
Yes. Every time.
That's amazing. That is a curveball that I'm sure no one will be able to make things up.
Yeah.
You are putting them under the spotlight to... okay. So now you're asking me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Wait. So you asked me now a question, just to kind of, I'll repeat the question so I understand it, I validate my understanding. If I have a 5-year-old, I have a 16-year-old. So if I have a 5-year-old, a 16-year-old, what value do I want or to teach them, right?
Yeah. What values do you want them to take from it?
So number one is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
To me, discipline is absolute. It's like, you know how I think of knowledge as two buckets, either humanities or natural. So physics, chemistry, all that is natural. And then humanities like psychology, sociology also. The foundations of that from the natural sciences is math. There's nothing beyond math. 1 + 1 = 2. You cannot. Physics, you explain it by math, chemistry, so on and so forth. In humanities, it's philosophy, right? It's like the epistemology, the way to think, how to think, what is knowledge, all that sort of stuff. So those are the things. To me, when it comes to what I want to teach them, the thing that is the basis is discipline. If they don't have discipline, everything else is irrelevant. So first thing is discipline. Because even some people would say, oh, what about morals, good, bad, this and that? Yes. You can be good. You want to aspire to be good. But guess what? If you don't have discipline, you wouldn't do anything. So that's what I would...
That's the first time I hear an answer like this, and I love it. You're hired.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Listen, it's been really a blast. I think I would go with you for hours, but I know that it's been an hour and a half, and I respect your time. So, any last words? Any
no, thank you very
comments?
much for having me. This has been great. I really appreciate it. And even though I retired 18 months ago, well, almost 3 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
It's really nice to take time and think back about things, and I really appreciate it.
I think you should do more podcasts. Thank you so much, Nabil. Thank you.
Hello, thanks.